Caves are popular tourist spots in America. Each year, more than 2 million people go inside these dark underground tunnels. Most people come out fine and just take home good memories. But sometimes, things go terribly wrong. In May 1993, in Kentucky's maze-like caves, one man's simple wish to explore would cost him his life. Since then, 81 people have died in American caves, showing just how dangerous these places can be when things go wrong. This is the heartbreaking story of William Coughlin, trapped forever in Buzzard's Roost cave. William Coughlin loved nature more than anything. He was 27 years old and worked protecting the environment in Oak Forest, Illinois. He was a big guy, 6 feet tall and 220 pounds, who spent all his free time outdoors. He had just started getting interested in exploring caves, thinking it would be his next big adventure. On Friday, May 28th, 1993, William and his two friends, James and Kevin, got in their car and drove all the way from Illinois to Cave City, Kentucky. They arrived during Memorial Day weekend, when the place was packed with tourists. But while most people were enjoying the above-ground attractions, William and his friends were more interested in what lay beneath their feet, the huge network of caves. When they first got there, they decided to take the historic tour, which was the easier option. It was basically a simple walk through the more open parts of the cave with a guide. Before going in, they had to sign some papers saying they wouldn't sue if anything went wrong. Looking back, these papers didn't really explain how dangerous the caves could be. They just made it seem like an exciting adventure. Kevin, one of William's friends, had a gut feeling after the first tour that maybe they shouldn't push their luck. He decided to stay above ground and explore the tourist attractions instead. This decision probably saved his life, but William and James were excited and wanted more adventure, so they signed up for the Wild Cave Tour that was happening that afternoon. The Wild Cave Tour was supposed to be more challenging and exciting. William and James joined 4 other people for this tour. The strange thing was, the guide only gave them 2 flashlights for the whole group. Anyone who knows about cave exploring will tell you that's not nearly enough. Each person should have at least 3 light sources of their own. At first, everything seemed fine. They made it to halfway through the tour without any problems. In fact, William and James thought it was easier than they had expected. But then they had to climb down 2 ladders made of cable. The first one was 30 feet high, and the second one was about 15 to 20 feet high and hung over some dangerous-looking rocks. After everyone climbed down both ladders, something unexpected happened. The guide told them that he needed to make a phone call because they were running late. He left the group alone at the bottom of the ladder, something that should never have happened in a cave tour. While the guide was gone, William saw an interesting-looking tunnel and decided to climb back up the second ladder to check it out. This is where everything went terribly wrong. William was already tired, and the ladder wasn't very stable. When he was about halfway up, he suddenly lost his grip. What happened next was horrible. He hit his head on a rock that was sticking out, then fell all the way down to the cave floor. The fall left a 2-inch cut on his head. Even though he was awake, he was really confused and couldn't think straight. When the guide finally came back, he made a big mistake. Instead of calling the professional help right away, he insisted they could get William out the same way they came in. James knew that this was a terrible idea and begged the guide to call a cave rescue team, but the guide didn't want to do that, probably because he was worried about scaring the tourists above ground. The group managed to move William through one tight spot, but then they faced an even bigger challenge. They had to go through a V-shaped tunnel that was so narrow you had to crawl on your belly to get through it. The tunnel was rough and sharp, making it hard to move. William, being a big guy, got stuck halfway through. He was trapped, lying sideways, with one of his arms pinned under his body. Things got really bad really fast. Because of how William was stuck, he couldn't breathe properly. His lungs were being squeezed, and every breath was a struggle. He could hear horrible gurgling sounds when he tried to breathe. James tried everything he could to pull his friend out, but every attempt just made William more stuck. It took 3 whole hours before any real help arrived. During this time, the tour guide and the cave owner tried to handle things themselves, not wanting to call the authorities. This wasted precious time that could have been used to save William's life. When the rescue team finally got there, they worked as hard as they could to save him. They used special heating blankets and heaters because the cave was really cold, about 44 degrees Fahrenheit. The rescuers tried to use ropes and pulleys to get William out, but every time they pulled, It caused them terrible pain. They kept trying for hours and hours, refusing to give up, but after 17 long hours of trying to save him, William passed away. Even after he died, it took another 7 hours just to get his body out of the cave. They finally brought him to the surface at 2:30 p.m. on Monday, almost 3 days after he first went into the cave. The coroner, Mike Swift, looked into how William died. He found that William basically suffocated because of how he was trapped, what doctors call compressive and positional asphyxia. The head injury from his fall made things even worse. This wasn't just a simple accident. It showed that a lot of things had gone wrong with how the cave tours were being run. When the case went to court, the judges found that the cave attraction owner was responsible for what happened. They said the papers William signed before the tour didn't properly warn him about how dangerous the cave could be. Instead, these papers made the whole thing sound like an exciting adventure without explaining the real risks. Because of this, William's family received money from the cave owners as compensation for their loss. William's death wasn't just about one person making a mistake. It revealed problems with how tourist caves were being run in the 1990s. Many were more focused on making money than keeping people safe. They didn't provide enough safety equipment, proper training, or clear warnings about the risks. William Coughlin went into that cave looking for adventure, just like many of us would. But what happened next shows us how fast things can go wrong underground. A young man who loved nature and worked to protect it lost his life because of mistakes that could have been avoided. William was just 27, with his whole life ahead of him, when he entered those dark tunnels in Kentucky. Let's think about this for a minute. What if things had been different that day? What if they had given everyone their own lights? What if each person had worn proper helmets? What if the guide had stayed with the group instead of leaving them alone? And maybe, most important, what if they called for help right away when William fell? If this story touched you and made you think, there's more where this came from, we tell these stories not just because they're interesting, but because they can save lives. Click subscribe button below and turn on notifications to hear more true stories about survival and safety. Next, we'll tell you about another cave tragedy that changed everything. Stay tuned.